Captain Jake Maverick Richardson pushed through the heavy oak doors of the Officers' Club at Naval Air Station Oceana, with the swagger of a man who'd never met a mirror he didn't like. His Nomex flight suit was perfectly tailored. His aviator sunglasses hung from a cord around his neck despite the evening hour, and his combination cover sat at just the right angle, regulation, but with enough attitude to say he owned the sky. "There he is," Lieutenant Joker Martinez called out from the bar, raising his glass. "The man who made two MiGs think they could fly without wings." The crowd of pilots erupted in cheers. Jake grinned, soaking it in like jet fuel. 3 confirmed kills in the last 6 months, 2 distinguished flying crosses, and a combat record that read like an action movie screenplay. At 32, he was the youngest captain in his squadron and the undisputed king of the air-to-air game. "Gentlemen, gentlemen," Jake announced, approaching the bar with his arms spread wide. "Please hold your applause. I'm just doing what comes naturally, being extraordinary." More laughter. The bartender, a retired Navy chief named Murphy who'd seen 3 decades of hotshot pilots come and go, rolled his eyes and poured Jake his usual bourbon. "Your ego called, Captain. Says you forgot it in the parking lot because it wouldn't fit through the door." "Murphy, my ego earned its own parking space." Jake threw back the drink, savoring the burn. This was his kingdom, the sacred space where naval aviators gathered to decompress, tell lies that were somehow true, and measure themselves against legends both living and dead. The O Club was old-school Navy. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, covered with decades of squadron patches, faded photographs of aircraft carriers, and plaques commemorating fallen aviators. The air smelled of leather, bourbon, and jet fuel, a perfume that every fighter pilot wore like cologne. Conversations hummed at a dozen tables where men and women in flight suits analyzed dogfights, planned missions, and maintained the warrior culture that separated naval aviation from everyone else who merely flew airplanes. Jake scanned the room, acknowledging nods from fellow pilots, when his eyes caught something unusual. In the far corner, alone at a small table positioned away from the main crowd, sat a woman in a flight suit. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and she hunched over what looked like tactical maps and mission documents, a mug of coffee going cold beside her forgotten hand. She was small, maybe 5'4", with an unremarkable face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd. Her flight suit looked worn, faded in places from countless hours in the cockpit. No patches he could see from this distance, no flashy unit insignia. Probably some new transfer, Jake thought. Maybe a nugget fresh out of Pensacola, trying to look busy to avoid attention. "Hey, Joker," Jake nudged his wingman. "Who's the wallflower playing paper pilot in the corner?" Joker glanced over, then quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in his drink. "Don't know. Probably just arrived for the briefing tomorrow." Something in Joker's voice didn't sit right, but Jake's attention had already moved on. A new pilot meant fresh meat, someone who hadn't heard all his stories yet, and more importantly, someone who might need guidance from a seasoned combat veteran. He was feeling generous tonight. Jake grabbed a fresh bourbon and sauntered across the room, his flight boots clicking on the hardwood floor. As he approached, he noticed the woman didn't look up, didn't acknowledge his presence at all. Her gray eyes, an unusual shade, almost silver, remained fixed on the documents before her. Her right hand held a pen, making small, precise notations on a flight chart. "Well, hello there," Jake said, sliding uninvited into the chair across from her. He flashed his most charming smile, the one that usually worked on everyone from junior officers to base commanders' daughters. "I don't think we've met. I'm Captain Jake Richardson, call sign Maverick, 3-time ace, graduate of Top Gun, and currently the squadron's leading scorer." She didn't look up, didn't even blink. Jake's smile wavered slightly. "You new to Oceana, this your first operational squadron?" "Nothing." The pen continued its precise movements across the chart. "Okay then," Jake leaned back, his ego bruising slightly. Strong, silent type. I can respect that. But you know, in naval aviation, we're pretty social. Communication is key, especially between pilots who might end up flying together. Still no response. The woman reached for her coffee, took a sip without taking her eyes off the documents, then set it down with the same mechanical precision. Jake's face flushed. Behind him, he could feel eyes watching, fellow pilots wondering why Captain Maverick was being so thoroughly ignored. His pride kicked in, that dangerous combination of wounded ego and reckless confidence that had gotten him into trouble more times than he could count. "All right, sweetheart," Jake said, his voice taking on an edge. "Let me guess. You're fresh out of flight school trying to look important by studying mission plans you probably don't understand. It's cute. I did the same thing when I was a nugget, pretending I knew what I was doing." The pen stopped moving. "Tell you what," Jake continued, warming to his topic. "Stick with me tomorrow, watch how a real combat pilot operates. I'll show you some tricks they don't teach in Pensacola. Maybe even let you fly on my wing if you can keep up." The room had gone quiet. Jake didn't notice. He was too focused on establishing dominance over this woman who dared to ignore him. "So come on," he grinned, leaning forward with exaggerated friendliness. "What's your call sign? Let me guess, rookie, Butterfingers. Oh, I know, benchwarmer." The woman finally looked up. Those gray eyes locked onto his like a targeting radar achieving lock. Her face remained expressionless, but something in that gaze made Jake's breath catch. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of enemy pilots through the canopy of his FA-18 in the seconds before they realized they were already dead. "Night Fox," she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Every conversation in the officers' club stopped mid-word. Glasses froze halfway to lips. A fork clattered against a plate in the sudden silence. Behind Jake, he heard Lieutenant Colonel Hammer Davis, a 20-year veteran with 4 combat tour, slowly stand up, coming to a position that was almost attention. Jake's confident smile melted like wax near a blowtorch. The color drained from his face as his brain processed the name, cross-referencing it with stories he'd heard, legends whispered in ready rooms, a call sign that every naval aviator knew. "Oh God," he breathed, the words barely audible. Night Fox held his gaze for one more long, devastating second. Then, without a word, she looked back down at her charts and resumed making notations, dismissing him as thoroughly as if he'd ceased to exist. Jake stood up too fast, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. Every pilot in the room was staring at him now, some with pity, others with barely concealed amusement, all of them knowing exactly what had just happened. Captain Jake Maverick Richardson, ace fighter pilot and master of the sky, had just made the worst first impression of his entire military career. And tomorrow, he'd be flying as her wingman. Jake stumbled out of the officers' club like a man who'd just taken a missile hit. His hands shook slightly as he fumbled for his car keys in the parking lot, the humid Virginia evening air doing nothing to cool the burning shame that crawled up his neck. Jake, Joker sprinted after him, catching his arm. "Where are you going?" "Home, away, anywhere but here." Jake's voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what I just did?" "Yeah, man. Everyone in that room knows exactly what you just did." Joker's expression was somewhere between sympathy and disbelief. "I tried to warn you with my eyes, but you just kept digging." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jake rounded on his wingman. "Why didn't anyone tell me Night Fox was a woman, that she'd be here?" "Because Night Fox isn't a woman pilot or a female aviator," Joker said quietly. "Night Fox is Night Fox. Gender doesn't even enter the equation when you're talking about someone who operates at that level. And honestly, nobody thought you were stupid enough to walk up to a strange pilot and act like you owned the place without even asking who they were first." Jake leaned against his truck, closing his eyes. "Tell me, I need to know exactly how badly I just screwed up." Joker pulled out his phone, scrolling through it. You really don't know the story. I've heard the name, heard rumors about some impossible rescue mission, but I've been deployed for the last 8 months. I missed the details. Okay, Joker leaned against the truck beside him. Sit down for this one. 3 years ago, July 2023, 6-man SEAL team inserted into the Hindu Kush Mountains, Operation Copper Dagger. Intelligence mission, supposed to be routine. They were gathering intel on Taliban weapons caches near the Pakistani border. I remember hearing about that op going sideways, Jake said. Sideways is an understatement. The SEALs got compromised. Taliban fighters, maybe 200 strong, surrounded their position. The weather turned bad, monsoon season storms rolling in, winds gusting to 60 knots, visibility near zero. The team called for emergency extraction. Joker pulled up a grainy photograph on his phone, 6 bearded men in combat gear, crouched behind rocks, firing at unseen enemies. They held out for 6 hours, used every round of ammunition they had, called in danger-close airstrikes that were so close they were getting hit by shrapnel from their own bombs. But the hellos couldn't get in. Weather was too bad, enemy fire too heavy. Jesus, Jake whispered. Command made the call. They categorized it as a probable loss situation, told the team to E and E if possible, but basically wrote them off. The rescue birds turned back. Joker's jaw tightened. Those 6 SEALs were given last rites over the radio by the chaplain. They were told to prepare for capture or death. But they made it out. Because of her. Joker scrolled to another photo. A young woman in a flight suit, no smile, receiving the Navy Cross from the Secretary of the Navy. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, call sign Night Fox, 29 years old at the time, only 4 years out of flight school. She was stationed on the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea, scheduled for a routine CAP mission the next morning. What did she do? She listened to the radio traffic, heard those SEALs being abandoned, heard them saying goodbye to their families over tactical frequencies. Joker's voice dropped, and she made a decision that should have gotten her court-martialed. Jake waited transfixed. At 200 hours during a storm that had grounded every other aircraft in the theater, Lieutenant Chen walked out to the flight deck, fired up an FA-18 Super Hornet and launched without clearance, without authorization, without a wingman and without a filed flight plan. She just took the jet and went. That's insane. She could have been killed for stealing a $90 million aircraft. The air boss tried to stop her on the radio. She turned off her transponder and went radio silent, disappeared into a storm system that had winds violent enough to rip wings off planes. Joker showed him radar imagery, a massive purple and red blob of weather covering the entire region. Meteorology said flying in those conditions was suicide. Not dangerous, not risky, suicide. How did she even navigate? Nobody knows for sure. She flew 120 miles through mountain passes in zero visibility, using only terrain-following radar and night vision. Intel said the valleys she transited had enemy radar coverage and SAM sights every 10 miles. She stayed 50 feet off the deck, 50 feet, threading through canyons that were barely 200 feet wide in places, in the dark, in a storm, dodging radar coverage. Joker pulled up gun camera footage on his phone. The grainy green night vision image showed a cockpit view racing through a narrow mountain valley, rock walls flashing past on both sides close enough to touch. Jake felt his stomach drop just watching it. The SEALs heard her before they saw her, said it sounded like the voice of God, this massive roar of jet engines echoing through the valley. Then she appeared, flying straight down the throat of enemy positions, cannons firing, ordnance away. She made 3 gun runs, killing or scattering the Taliban fighters, buying the SEALs time. But how did she extract them? A Super Hornet is a single-seat fighter. She didn't extract them herself. She radioed the rescue helos that had turned back, gave them real-time targeting data, and flew top cover while they came in. She engaged enemy positions with her cannon until she was Winchester, completely out of ammunition. Then she used her jet as a distraction, making fake attack runs to draw fire away from the extraction birds. Jake stared at the photo of Night Fox receiving her medal. Her expression was stoic, uncomfortable with the attention. She saved 6 lives. She saved 6 lives after being told it was impossible, after command gave up, after every regulation said she should stay put. Joker locked eyes with Jake. And you know what she said when they asked her why she did it? What? They were still calling for help. Someone had to answer. Joker pocketed his phone. The SEALs she saved. One of them was Master Chief Marcus Grant. His daughter was dying of leukemia. He made it home in time to say goodbye because of Night Fox. Another was Lieutenant Blake Morrison, whose wife was 8 months pregnant with twins. He was there for their birth. The weight of it settled over Jake like a lead blanket. The Special Operations community worships her, Joker continued. Every SEAL, every PJ, every combat controller knows her name. She's got a standing invitation to any military base in the world. There are guys who have literally named their children after her. And I called her sweetheart and asked if she was a rookie, Jake said hollowly. Yeah, man, you did. Joker clapped him on the shoulder. Look, everyone makes mistakes, but tomorrow morning at 600 you're going to be sitting in a briefing room where you're assigned as her wingman for a classified strike mission. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen is the mission commander. You answer to her. Your life is literally in her hands. Jake felt like he might throw up. What do I do? You show up on time, you shut your mouth, and you fly like your life depends on it, because it does. Don't apologize again. She doesn't care about your words. Show her you can do the job. Show her you can be trusted at 20,000 feet with missiles in the air and the enemy trying to kill you both. And if I can't keep up with her? Joker's expression was grim. Then you'll wash out of this mission and probably your career because everyone will know you couldn't hack it. But honestly, he softened slightly. I've flown with you, Jake. You're good, maybe even great on your best day. But Night Fox, she's something else entirely. She's what we all wish we could be. Jake looked back at the officers' club, where through the windows he could see Night Fox still sitting alone, still studying her charts, completely unbothered by the chaos she'd caused simply by existing. I thought I was the best, Jake admitted quietly. You're very good, Maverick, but tomorrow you're going to learn the difference between being very good and being legendary. Joker headed toward his own car. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. Flying with Night Fox is like flying with a ghost. She sees things before they happen, moves before the enemy knows they're in danger. Try to keep up if you can. Jake stood alone in the parking lot as the sun finally set completely, leaving only the amber glow of streetlights and the distant roar of jets taking off for night operations. Somewhere out there, pilots were training, fighting, dying. And tomorrow, he'd be flying into combat with a woman who'd looked death in the eye and made it blink first. His phone buzzed. A text from the squadron commander. Briefing 600, don't be late. And Richardson, bring your A-game, you're flying with the best. Jake looked at those words for a long time. The best. Not one of the best or a great pilot. The best. And he'd treated her like a rookie. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough, and also Jake desperately wished tomorrow would never arrive. Jake woke at 4:30, though woke implied he'd actually slept. He'd spent most of the night staring at his ceiling, replaying the disaster at the O Club, mentally preparing himself for the humiliation that awaited at the briefing. His dress uniform hung on the closet door crisp, pressed, every ribbon perfectly aligned. But this morning those decorations felt hollow. He'd earned them, yes, but had he earned the right to wear them in the same room as Night Fox? By 5:15, Jake was in his truck, driving through the pre-dawn darkness toward the squadron building. The base was quiet except for the distant howl of jets on the flight line, FA-18s being prepped for the morning's operations. Somewhere out there, maintainers were fueling, arming and inspecting the very aircraft that might bring him home alive today. Or wouldn't. The classified briefing room was in the secure facility, a windowless building surrounded by fencing and armed guards. Jake showed his credentials, went through 2 security checkpoints, and surrendered his phone. Inside, the air conditioning was arctic, and the smell of stale coffee and stress hung in the air like a fog. He was the first to arrive, or so he thought. Then he noticed her in the corner, already there, surrounded by charts, satellite imagery, and weather reports spread across a table. Night Fox wore a fresh flight suit, her dark hair again pulled back in that severe bun. She didn't look up when he entered, didn't acknowledge his presence at all. She simply continued working, making notations on a tactical map with red and blue markers. Jake took a seat in the back row, as far from her as possible. He felt like a student who disappointed a teacher, small, ashamed, desperate for a chance at redemption that might never come. At 5:45, other pilots began filtering in. Jake recognized most of them: combat veterans, squadron leaders, weapons officers. These weren't nuggets. These were the best pilots in naval aviation, handpicked for whatever mission was about to be briefed, and every single one of them made a point to greet Night Fox first. "Morning, Commander," said Lieutenant Colonel Davis, Colson Hammer, a barrel-chested man with 20 years and 4 combat tour under his belt. "Weather looks challenging. 7/10 cloud coverage over the target area, winds gusting to 40 knots, Night Fox replied without looking up from her charts. "But there's a window from 2:20 to 2:45 local time. Visibility improves, winds drop to 25 knots. That's our shot." "Tight timing." "Very tight, which is why we're not leaving any room for error today." Now she looked up, and Jake saw her gray eyes sweep the room, cataloging every pilot, assessing, calculating. "Everyone here needs to be perfect. No cowboys, no heroes. We execute as a team, or we don't execute at all." Her eyes passed over Jake without stopping, as if he were a piece of furniture. That hurt worse than anger would have. At exactly 600, a Navy commander Jake didn't recognize closed the briefing room door and locked it. "Gentlemen, ladies, we're secure. This is a classified TSSCI mission brief. Nothing discussed here leaves this room. Commander Chen, you have the floor." Night Fox stood and moved to the front of the room with an economy of motion that suggested she'd briefed 1,000 missions before. She dimmed the lights, and a satellite image appeared on the screen, a mountainous region Jake didn't immediately recognize. "Objective, a weapons development facility here." She pointed to a valley complex, approximately 40 miles inside hostile territory. "Intelligence indicates the facility is producing advanced radar-guided surface-to-air missile systems. These systems have already resulted in the loss of 3 coalition aircraft in the past 2 months. The room went silent. 3 aircraft meant at least 3 dead pilots, maybe 6 if they had 2-seaters. "The mission is a precision strike to destroy the facility's production capability. Total package, 12 aircraft. 4 FA-18EF Super Hornets as the strike element, that's Alpha Flight. 2 EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, Bravo Flight. 2 FA-18s for fighter sweep, Charlie Flight. 2 tankers for air refueling, and 2 rescue birds on standby." She clicked to the next slide, showing the ingress route. "We launch at 2100 hours local. Fly-in will use terrain masking through these valleys to avoid radar detection. The facility is protected by overlapping radar coverage, mobile SAM sites, and rapid reaction fighters approximately 12 minutes away at their closest base." Jake felt his mouth go dry. This wasn't a surgical strike. This was threading a needle while people shot at you. "Timing is critical," Night Fox continued, her voice steady and clear. "We hit the target during their shift change, 2030 to 2100 local time. Security is reduced, and we've identified a gap in their radar coverage that lasts exactly 23 minutes. We'll be in and out during that window." "What if the window closes early?" asked Commander Diesel Patterson, one of the most experienced pilots in the room. "Then we abort and try again tomorrow night. No mission is worth losing aircraft trying to force bad timing." Night Fox met his eyes. "But we won't abort if we don't have to. That facility has killed too many of our people already." She clicked through slides showing the target layout, expected defenses, egress routes, search and rescue procedures, and communication protocols. Every detail was planned with a precision that bordered on obsessive. She'd anticipated questions before they were asked, identified problems before they emerged, and built contingencies into contingencies. Jake found himself taking notes furiously, trying to keep up with the flood of information. This wasn't just mission planning. This was a masterclass in combat leadership. "Alpha 1, that's me," Night Fox indicated on the formation diagram. "Alpha 2 is Captain Richardson, call sign Maverick." Every head in the room turned to look at Jake. He felt their eyes on him, judging, wondering if he was worthy to fly on her wing. "Alpha 3 and 4 are Commander Patterson and Lieutenant Commander Hayes. We'll approach from the northwest, use this ridgeline for masking, then pop up at waypoint Delta for weapons release. Time over target is 18 seconds. Then we're out, following the egress route through this valley system." She paused, making eye contact with each pilot individually. When those gray eyes found Jake, he forced himself not to look away. He deserved this. Deserved her scrutiny, her doubt, her cold professionalism. "Electronic warfare is critical," Night Fox continued. "Bravo Flight, your job is to jam their radar at exactly 22:37 hours. Not a second early. We don't want to alert them we're coming. Not a second late, or Alpha Flight flies into a wall of missiles. Your timing must be perfect." The Growler pilots nodded grimly. "Fighter sweep, you're our insurance policy. If enemy fighters scramble, you engage and keep them off the strike package. We cannot afford to fight our way to the target and back." "Rules of engagement?" someone asked. "Weapons free on any hostile aircraft that threatens the package. Priority is protecting the strike birds and getting everyone home alive." Night Fox pulled up the final slide, a photo of a burned F-16 wreckage. "This is what happens when we get it wrong. This was Captain Jennifer Torres, shot down by a missile from the facility we're hitting tomorrow. She ejected, was captured, and spent 3 months as a POW before we got her back. I will not lose anyone the way we lost her freedom." The room was electric with tension now. This wasn't theoretical. This wasn't training. Tomorrow night, people would be trying very hard to kill them, and they'd only survive if every pilot did their job perfectly. "Questions?" Night Fox asked. Commander Davis raised his hand. "Commander, that valley approach, the one at waypoint Charlie, is barely 200 feet wide according to these measurements. Flying 4 aircraft through there in combat spread is going to be tight." "It's 180 feet wide at the narrowest point," Night Fox corrected, "which gives us 90 feet of clearance on each side if we fly in trail formation instead of spread. We'll transition to spread after we clear the valley." "That's asking a lot in combat conditions at night, with possible enemy fire." Night Fox's expression didn't change. "Commander, I've flown through tighter gaps in worse conditions. The valley is manageable if we're precise. That's why I'm leading. I'll demonstrate the path and everyone else follows my track exactly. Trust me." And there it was. Not arrogance, not bravado, just absolute, unshakable confidence born from having done impossible things before and survived. "I trust you, Commander," Davis said simply. Every other pilot in the room nodded agreement. Night Fox's eyes found Jake one more time. "Captain Richardson, you're my wingman. That means you're responsible for covering my 6, maintaining formation through the ingress and being my backup if I take damage or malfunction. Can you handle that responsibility?" Every eye turned to Jake again. This was it, his moment to prove he wasn't the arrogant fool from last night. His moment to show he deserved to be here. Jake stood up, came to attention. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be exactly where you need me, exactly when you need me there. You have my word." Something flickered in those gray eyes. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready to give him that yet, but maybe acknowledgement, recognition that he understood the assignment. "Good, because tomorrow night we're going into the worst defenses in the theater and we're all coming home. No exceptions, no losses, everyone returns." She turned back to the room. "Pre-flight brief is at 2,000 hours tomorrow. Between now and then, study these materials until you can fly the mission in your sleep. Memorize every waypoint, every altitude, every frequency. When we're over that target, there won't be time to check notes. Any mistakes will be written in blood." The briefing officer stood. "That concludes the classified portion. Mission materials will be available in the secure vault. Remember, no discussion of this mission outside secure facilities. Dismissed." As pilots filed out, Jake noticed they all stopped to speak with Night Fox, seeking her input, asking technical questions, getting her thoughts on various aspects of the mission. She answered each one with patience and precision, treating even the most junior pilot with respect. Finally, only Jake remained. He approached slowly, carefully. "Commander Chen." She looked up from packing her materials. "Captain, I just wanted to say, I'll be ready. I won't let you down." Night Fox studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Words are cheap, Captain Richardson. Tomorrow night, at 20,000 feet with missiles in the air, I'll find out what you're really made of. Until then, your promises mean nothing to me." She walked past him toward the door, then paused. "But for what it's worth, the fact that you showed up early, took notes, and didn't make excuses, that's a start. Keep going in that direction." Then she was gone, leaving Jake alone in the briefing room with the weight of tomorrow night pressing down on his shoulders like gravity itself. He had 18 hours to prove he deserved to fly with a legend. 18 hours to become worthy of the call sign he wore. 18 hours until everything changed. Jake spent the next 16 hours living in the secure vault, studying mission materials until his eyes burned and his brain felt like it was leaking out of his ears. Every waypoint memorized, every frequency committed to memory, every contingency plan mapped in his mind like a second nervous system. Around noon, Joker found him hunched over satellite imagery, tracing flight paths with his finger for the 100th time. "Man, you haven't eaten since yesterday. Come grab lunch." "Can't. I need to understand this valley approach. Night Fox is going to fly it at 450 knots, 50 feet off the deck at night. I need to be able to follow her exactly." "Jake, you're going to burn yourself out before the mission even starts." "Then I'll burn out, but I won't be the weak link that gets her killed." Jake looked up, and Joker was startled by the intensity in his eyes. "She's trusting me with her life tomorrow, Joker. After what I said to her, after how I acted, she's still willing to let me fly on her wing. I have to earn that." Joker set down a sandwich he'd brought. "Eat this. You can't fly on an empty stomach. Night Fox wouldn't want you compromising the mission by being weak from hunger." Jake grabbed the sandwich, eating mechanically while still studying the charts. "Did you know the facility has mobile SAM sites that relocate every 4 hours? We have to time our approach between their movement window, 37 minutes when they're most vulnerable." "I know, I was in the same briefing." "The margin for error is 8 seconds. 8 seconds, Joker. If we're 8 seconds late, those SAM sites are operational and we're flying into a kill box." Jake's hand trembled slightly as he traced the egress route. "She's done this before, flown through impossible situations and brought everyone home. I've never operated at this level." "Then tomorrow night you're going to learn how." Joker squeezed his shoulder. "You're a good pilot, Jake. Stop psyching yourself out." But Jake couldn't stop. Because for the first time in his career, he'd met someone who made him feel like a student pilot again. Raw, inexperienced, desperately trying to measure up to a standard he'd never imagined existed. At 1800 hours, Jake went to the gym to burn off nervous energy. He found Night Fox there, alone, running on a treadmill at a punishing pace. Her face was serene, almost meditative, despite the brutal speed. Sweat soaked her PT gear, but her breathing remained controlled, rhythmic. Jake climbed onto the treadmill beside hers, starting his own run. For 10 minutes, neither spoke, just the mechanical whir of treadmills and their synchronized breathing. Finally, Night Fox spoke without looking at him. "You've been in the vault all day." "Yes, ma'am." "Memorizing waypoints?" "Every single one. Frequencies, altitudes, timing sequences, emergency procedures." Jake increased his pace to match hers. "I won't be the reason this mission fails." "Good." She ran in silence for another minute. "But don't just memorize numbers, Captain. Understand the why behind them. Know why we're using that specific valley approach. Understand why the timing window is exactly 23 minutes. When things go wrong, and they will, the pilots who survive are the ones who understand the mission deeply enough to adapt." "How do you stay so calm?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow we're flying into the most heavily defended target in the theater. You seem peaceful." Night Fox hit the stop button on her treadmill, slowing to a walk. "I'm terrified, Captain Richardson. Every single time I strap into that cockpit before combat, I'm absolutely terrified." Jake nearly stumbled. "You terrified?" "Fear is what keeps you alive. It sharpens your senses, makes you careful, reminds you that death is always one mistake away." She grabbed her towel, wiping sweat from her face. "The pilots who aren't afraid, they're the dangerous ones. They take stupid risks, they push too hard, they get themselves and their wingmen killed." "But you flew through the Hindu Kush alone, in a storm, against impossible odds." "Because 6 men were dying and I was terrified of living in a world where I didn't try to save them." Her gray eyes found his. "Fear doesn't mean paralysis, Captain. It means respect. Respect for the danger, respect for the mission, respect for the lives depending on you. I was terrified that night. I'm terrified tomorrow night. But I'll fly anyway because that's what we do." She walked toward the exit, then paused. "You asked how I stay calm. I don't. I just refuse to let fear control me. There's a difference." Jake stood there, treadmill still running beneath his feet, watching her leave. Every conversation with her was a lesson, a glimpse into a mindset he was only beginning to understand. At 2000 hours, the pre-flight briefing assembled. This time, Jake was ready. When Night Fox asked technical questions, he had answers. When she requested altitude confirmations, he provided them instantly. When she reviewed communication protocols, he demonstrated he knew every frequency, every call sign, every procedure. "Captain Richardson," she said after his third perfect response, "you've been studying." "Yes, ma'am. I told you I'd be ready." Something softened in her expression, not quite a smile, but close. "Good. I need a wingman I can trust tomorrow, not a student I have to babysit." After the briefing, the pilots dispersed to handle personal preparations. Jake found Night Fox in the hangar, inspecting her aircraft with Maintenance Chief Rodriguez and his crew. She ran her hands along the fuselage, checking panel seams, testing control surfaces, examining every detail with meticulous care. "Commander Chen always does this," Chief Rodriguez said quietly to Jake. "Every single flight she inspects personally. Says she trusts us completely, but she's the one flying the jet. She should know its condition." Jake watched her work. This wasn't paranoia or lack of trust. This was a pilot who understood that her life depended on thousands of mechanical systems working perfectly in the most hostile environment imaginable. "Chief Rodriguez," Night Fox called out, "this hydraulic line, is it supposed to have this slight weep?" The chief climbed up immediately, inspecting where she pointed. His eyes widened. "Jesus. Good catch, Commander. That's a potential failure point. Would have been catastrophic under combat stress loads." "Can you fix it before launch?" "Absolutely. Give me 90 minutes." He turned to his crew. Henderson, Watson, get me a replacement hydraulic assembly stat. Night Fox climbed down and Jake approached. How did you spot that? I walked past that jet 3 times today and never noticed. Because you were looking at the jet. I was looking for problems. She pulled off her gloves. The aircraft wants to tell you when something's wrong, you just have to listen. Check panel alignment. If it's off by even a millimeter, something underneath is damaged or loose. Listen to the sound of hydraulics. Any variation from normal means potential failure. Feel vibrations in control surfaces. Smoothness means health. Resistance means problems. They don't teach that in flight school. They teach you to fly. Experience teaches you to survive. She headed toward the ready room. Come on, we've got 3 hours before step time. I want to walk through the mission one more time. In the ready room, Night Fox used a wall-mounted chart to physically walk through every phase of the mission. Not just reviewing, actually simulating, moving her hands like aircraft, calling out altitudes and headings, visualizing every second. Here, she pointed to the valley approach. This is where we're most vulnerable. The valley walls will block enemy radar, but they'll also block our own situational awareness. We'll be flying on instruments and trust. You need to stay exactly 200 feet behind me, matching my every move. If I break left, you break left. If I climb, you climb. No thinking, no hesitation, just react. What if you take fire? Then you continue the mission. Alpha 3 and 4 will complete the strike. Your job becomes getting back to base and reporting what happened. Her voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. We all accept that risk when we signed up for this. I don't accept that risk, Jake said firmly. If you take fire, I'm covering you until you're safe or until I can't fly anymore. Night Fox turned to face him fully. That's not your decision to make, Captain. The mission comes first, always. The mission is to destroy that facility and bring everyone home. You said it yourself, no exceptions, no losses. Jake met her eyes. I'm not leaving you behind, not for anything. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, Night Fox spoke, her voice softer. You sound like the SEALs I pulled out of the Hindu Kush. They said the same thing, that they wouldn't leave each other. That's what made them worth saving. Then you understand why I'm saying it now. She nodded slowly. Just don't do anything stupid trying to be a hero. Smart flying beats brave flying every time. What about smart and brave? The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then you might actually survive this career, Captain Richardson. At 20:30 hours, pilots began suiting up. The ritual was sacred. Flight suits checked and rechecked. Survival vests loaded with emergency equipment, helmets inspected for any flaws. Jake watched Night Fox go through her routine with the same meticulous precision she applied to everything else. She carried a small photo in her vest pocket, 6 bearded SEALs standing together, arms around each other's shoulders. The men from the Hindu Kush. They send me a photo every year on the anniversary, she said, noticing Jake looking. Reminds me why we do this. Not for medals or recognition, for them. For the people depending on us to be perfect when it matters most. That's a heavy burden. It's the job. She secured the photo carefully in her vest, ready to walk out to the flight line. Jake took a deep breath, ready. They walked out together into the warm evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. On the flight line, 12 FA-18 Super Hornets sat in a row, armed and fueled, ready for war. Maintenance crews made final checks while ordnance specialists verified weapons loads. Night Fox paused at her aircraft, placing one hand on the fuselage. Jake realized she was praying, silently, privately, asking whatever God she believed in to bring her home alive. Then she looked at Jake, and her expression was pure steel. Let's go to work, Maverick. Time to see what you're really made of. You won't be disappointed, Night Fox. Good, because in 2 hours we'll be over that target, and disappointing me will be the least of your problems. They climbed into their respective cockpits as the sun finally disappeared below the horizon and night, her element, claimed the sky. The pre-flight checks were a symphony of controlled chaos. Jake's hands moved through the familiar ritual: oxygen flow, ejection seat pins, instrument checks, weapons status. But nothing felt familiar tonight. His heart hammered against his ribs as he strapped into the cockpit of his FA-18 Super Hornet. The familiar smell of jet fuel and hydraulic fluid somehow sharper, more real. Alpha 2, comm check. Night Fox's voice came through his helmet speakers, calm, steady, like she was ordering coffee instead of preparing to fly into hell. Alpha 2, loud and clear. Jake forced his voice to match her composure. Good, remember, stay on my wing, match my altitude exactly, and trust your instruments. The terrain out there will lie to you. Your eyes will lie to you. Trust your jet and trust me. Copy that, Night Fox. At exactly 2100 hours, the tower cleared them for launch. Night Fox's aircraft moved first, her Super Hornet rolling toward the catapult with practiced precision. Jake watched her jet get positioned, the launch crew connecting the catapult bridle, checking final clearances. Then came the salute, Night Fox's hand snapping up to her helmet in acknowledgement. The catapult officer dropped his flag. The Super Hornet exploded forward with 30,000 pounds of thrust, augmented by the catapult's brutal acceleration. In 2.5 seconds, Night Fox went from 0 to 165 miles per hour and launched into the darkening sky, her afterburners painting twin columns of fire against the twilight. Alpha 2, you're cleared for launch, the tower announced. Jake's turn. He taxied onto the catapult, felt the holdback bar engage. His heart rate spiked as the catapult tensioned. He ran through final checks, advanced throttles to military power, then into afterburner. The jet shook like it wanted to tear itself apart. Salute flag drop, launch. The catapult slammed Jake back into his seat with crushing force. His vision tunneled, his lungs compressed. Then suddenly he was airborne, the carrier falling away beneath him, ocean and sky trading places as he climbed to join formation. Alpha 2's airborne, Jake called, scanning his instruments and radar display. Copy 2, form up on my left wing. Let's go earn our pay. Jake spotted her aircraft, a dark silhouette against the deepening blue of evening. He maneuvered into position, tucking in tight on her wing. Behind them, the rest of the strike package launched in sequence, Alpha 3 and 4, the Growlers, the fighter sweep. For the first 30 minutes, they flew in relative peace, heading northeast toward hostile territory. The sun disappeared completely, leaving only stars and the ghostly glow of cockpit instruments. Jake's eyes adjusted to the darkness as he maintained formation on Night Fox's wing. All elements push to tactical frequency, Night Fox commanded. The radio clicked as the package switched to encrypted communications. Alpha Flight, descend to 500 feet. Terrain masking starts in 3 minutes. Jake's stomach tightened. 500 feet above the ocean at night was already dangerous. What came next would be insane. The coastline appeared on radar, jagged, mountainous terrain rising from the sea like the teeth of some ancient beast. Night Fox didn't hesitate. She nosed over into a dive that made Jake's inner ear scream, dropping from 20,000 feet to 500 feet in what felt like seconds. Alpha Flight, follow my lead. We're going low. Low didn't describe it. Night Fox dropped to 200 feet above the water, then 100 feet, then impossibly lower. Jake's radar altimeter screamed warnings as he followed her down. The ocean surface rushed past beneath them at 450 knots, close enough that Jake could see individual whitecaps in his night vision. Feet dry in 10 seconds, Night Fox announced. Terrain masking begins now. They crossed the coastline and Night Fox immediately pulled into a climb, following the contour of the land. Mountains rose on both sides, dark and menacing. She flew like she'd memorized every ridge, every valley, every feature of the terrain. Her aircraft banked hard left, threading between two peaks with maybe 50 feet of clearance. Jake followed, his hands death-gripping the stick. Sweat ran down his spine despite the cockpit air conditioning. This wasn't flying. This was controlled falling through a maze of mountains at speeds that gave him zero time to react if something went wrong. Alpha 2, tighten your formation, Night Fox instructed. You're drifting 3 degrees right. How did she even notice that while flying through this terrain? Jake corrected, pulling closer. Night Fox banked right, dropped into a valley, then immediately pulled up to clear a ridgeline that appeared from nowhere. Coming up on waypoint Charlie, the narrow valley, she warned. Alpha 3 and 4 hold at waypoint Bravo. 2, stay in trail formation directly behind me. Match my moves exactly. Jake swallowed hard. This was it, the valley that was only 180 feet wide. Night Fox's aircraft rolled inverted briefly, then snapped upright and dove into a gap between two mountain faces that looked impossible to navigate. Jake followed, his entire world narrowing to her aircraft's position and the rock walls flashing past on both sides. The valley twisted like a snake. Left, then hard right, then a slight climb, then down again. Night Fox flew with absolute precision, her aircraft never deviating from the perfect center line. Jake struggled to keep up, his instruments going crazy with terrain warnings, his night vision showing nothing but walls of stone that seemed close enough to touch. 30 seconds to valley exit, Night Fox said calmly, as if she were announcing a turn onto a highway instead of flying through a geological death trap at 400 knots. Jake's breathing was ragged. His hands ached from gripping the stick so hard, but he stayed with her, matching every move, trusting that she knew what she was doing. They burst from the valley exit and Night Fox immediately called. Alpha Flight, combat spread formation. 3 and 4 rejoin. Jake moved into proper combat spacing, 4,000 feet to Night Fox's left. Commander Patterson and Lieutenant Commander Hayes rejoined from their holding position. Good flying, Alpha Flight, Night Fox said. Now comes the hard part. The hard part, Jake thought wildly. That wasn't the hard part. Bravo Flight, status check. Night Fox called to the electronic warfare aircraft. Bravo 1, systems green. Ready for jamming on your call. Copy, stand by for my mark. Time to target is 12 minutes. All elements weapons checks. Jake ran through his weapons status. 2 2,000-pound GPS-guided bombs, AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles, AIM-120 AMRAAMs, and 412 rounds of 20 ammunition for his cannon. Everything showed green. Alpha 2, weapons green, Jake reported. Alpha 3, weapons green. Alpha 4, weapons green. Good, Night Fox's voice remained that same eerie calm. At waypoint Echo, we'll see their radar coverage. Bravo Flight will jam them, giving us 18 seconds of blindness. We use those 18 seconds to get into position for weapons release. Questions. Silence on the radio. Everyone knew the plan. Everyone understood the stakes. They flew on through the darkness, the terrain below invisible except as patterns on radar and the occasional dim light from a village. Jake's radar warning receiver remained quiet. They were still below enemy radar coverage, hidden by the mountains and valleys. Then, at exactly 22:37 hours, everything changed. Alpha Flight, enemy radar is active, Night Fox announced. They know something's out here. Bravo Flight, begin jamming, now. The radar warning receiver exploded with warnings. S-band radar, X-band radar, multiple emitters searching for them. Then the Growlers unleashed their electronic warfare suite, and suddenly the enemy radar signals became distorted, confused. We've got our window, Night Fox said. Alpha Flight, push to attack speed. Time to target 5 minutes. Jake pushed his throttles forward, feeling the Super Hornet accelerate. His airspeed indicator climbed past 500 knots, then 550. The terrain still rushed past below them, but now they were climbing, gaining altitude for the final attack run. "Charlie Flight, you've got enemy fighters scrambling from the northeast," the fighter sweep reported. "4 bogies, looks like MiG-29s. We're engaging." "Copy, Charlie, keep them off us," Night Fox responded. In the distance, Jake saw it, the weapons facility. Lights arranged in geometric patterns, security fences visible through his targeting pod, and surrounding it, the deadly defensive systems waiting to kill them. "Alpha Flight, Master Arm on," Night Fox commanded. "Select your targets, on my mark, weapons free." Jake flipped the Master Arm switch. His targeting system locked onto a hardened bunker on the eastern side of the facility. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the engine noise. Then the night sky erupted in fire. Surface-to-air missiles launched from hidden positions, their rocket motors leaving bright streaks against the darkness. Tracer fire arced upward like deadly fireworks. The enemy knew they were coming now, and they were ready. "Sam's in the air," Alpha 4 called out. "I've got 3, no 4 missiles tracking." "Break right 4, deploy chaff and flares," Night Fox commanded. "Alpha Flight, stay focused on the target, we've got one shot at this." Jake watched a missile streak past his canopy, missing by what felt like inches. His threat warning system screamed. Everything in his brain told him to break off, to run, to save himself. But he stayed on Night Fox's wing, watching her fly straight toward the target like the missiles didn't exist. 10 seconds to weapons release," she announced, her voice still impossibly calm. "Alpha Flight, hold your nerve, hold, hold." "Night Fox, you've got 2 missiles tracking you," Jake screamed. "I know, trust the plan, Maverick." She dove suddenly, violently, pulling 8 GS. Jake followed, fighting to keep consciousness as the blood drained from his brain. The missiles couldn't match the turn. They shot past overhead, their proximity fuses detonating harmlessly. Night Fox rolled inverted, pulled through, and lined up perfectly on her target. "Weapons free, Fox 3. Her bombs released, falling away toward the facility. "Alpha 2, weapons free," Jake called, pickling his own ordnance. The bombs fell through the darkness like angels of death. And then the night exploded into hell itself. The first bomb hit the facility's main production building, and for a split second, Jake thought they'd actually pulled it off. The explosion blossomed like a deadly flower, orange and red flames erupting skyward, secondary explosions rippling through the complex as ammunition stores cooked off. Then the trap revealed itself. "Alpha Flight, we've got multiple new radar emitters." The Growler pilot's voice carried an edge of panic. "They're coming online now, they were hidden. I'm reading. Jesus, I'm reading 12 SA-15 systems and at least 4 S-400 batteries." "That's triple what intelligence briefed," Commander Patterson shouted. "We need to abort." But Night Fox had already seen it. Her radar warning receiver was lit up like a Christmas tree, threat indicators screaming from every direction. The facility hadn't been a weapons production site. It had been bait, and they'd flown straight into the trap. "They knew we were coming," Night Fox said, her voice tight but controlled. "This was planned. Bravo Flight, maximize jamming now. Alpha Flight, break formation and egress independently." A wall of surface-to-air missiles launched simultaneously, not 4 or 6, but dozens. Smoke trails crisscrossed the night sky, creating a lethal spider web of death. Jake's threat warning system went from screaming to a continuous solid tone, the computer's way of saying, "You're already dead, stop bothering me with alerts." "Missiles, missiles, missiles," multiple voices called out simultaneously. Night Fox's aircraft snapped into a violent defensive maneuver, a 9G break that would have made most pilots black out. Jake followed, feeling his vision tunnel, his body compressed into the seat as blood tried to drain from his brain. His G-suit inflated, squeezing his legs and torso, fighting to keep him conscious. A missile passed so close Jake could see the rivets on its body in his night vision. It detonated 50 feet away, shrapnel peppering his aircraft. Warning lights illuminated on his caution panel, hydraulic pressure fluctuating, but still in the green. Alpha 4, I'm hit, Lieutenant Commander Hayes' voice cracked. Starboard engine fire, losing hydraulics. Jake looked right and saw Hayes' Super Hornet trailing flame, the right engine completely engulfed. The pilot was fighting for control, the aircraft wobbling as damaged systems failed one by one. Hayes, shut down the right engine and activate your fire suppression, Night Fox commanded. Can you maintain altitude? Negative, I'm losing altitude fast, going to have to punch out. Vector southeast, away from the target area, Night Fox instructed. Get as far from enemy territory as possible before ejecting. Jake watched Hayes' aircraft descend, trailing fire like a falling star. Another explosion bloomed behind them. Alpha 3 or 4 had scored a direct hit on what looked like a command bunker. But the victory felt hollow as they watched their wingman dying in the sky. Alpha 4 ejecting, Hayes called. Mayday, mayday, mayday. The canopy blew off Hayes' aircraft, followed instantly by the ejection seat's rocket motor firing. The seat arced away from the stricken jet, and seconds later Jake saw the parachute deploy, a white blossom against the darkness. The Super Hornet augured into a mountainside and exploded. Good shoot, Commander Patterson confirmed. Hayes is alive. I've got his beacon. All aircraft, this is Overwatch, the AWACS controller called from their orbiting position far behind friendly lines. Be advised, Hayes went down approximately 15 miles inside hostile territory. Enemy quick reaction forces are scrambling to his position. ETA 12 minutes. Alpha Flight egress immediately, Night Fox commanded. We need to. Overwatch Alpha 4, Hayes' voice came through, breathing hard. I'm on the ground. Got a good shoot, no injuries, but I can see vehicle lights converging on my position from multiple directions. Request immediate extraction. There was a pause. Jake could hear the AWACS crew consulting, calculating, weighing options. Then came the words every pilot dreaded. Alpha 4 Overwatch. Negative on immediate extraction. Enemy air defenses are too heavy. Weather is deteriorating. SAR birds cannot penetrate your location. You are code Alpha Sierra. Alpha Sierra, awaiting strategic recovery. Military speak for, you're on your own, try to evade and survive until we can get to you. Maybe tomorrow, maybe never. Overwatch say again, Hayes' voice was tight with fear. You're leaving me here. Alpha 4, you need to execute your E&E plan. Proceed to waypoint Zebra and... Negative, Overwatch. Night Fox's voice cut through like a blade. Alpha 1 is not leaving a pilot in enemy hands. Alpha 1, this is Overwatch Actual. A different voice now, the mission commander, a Navy captain. You are ordered to egress immediately. We cannot risk additional aircraft or pilots attempting a rescue in those conditions. That is a direct order. Jake watched Night Fox's aircraft on his display. She should be turning southeast, following the egress route. Every regulation, every rule of engagement said you follow orders. You don't throw good money after bad. You don't risk 8 pilots to save 1. But Night Fox wasn't turning southeast. She was banking hard toward Hayes' position. Overwatch Alpha 1 copies your order, Night Fox said, her voice glacially cold. I'm refusing it. No pilot gets left behind on my watch. The radio exploded with multiple voices, Overwatch commanding her to comply, other pilots trying to reason with her, the fighter sweep reporting more enemy aircraft scrambling. But through it all, Night Fox remained utterly calm. Alpha Flight, if you want to follow orders and egress, I understand. No one will question your decision. She paused. But I'm going to get Commander Hayes. Anyone who wants to help is welcome to follow me. Anyone who doesn't should leave now. Jake had maybe 3 seconds to make the most important decision of his career. Follow orders, live to fly another day, keep his spotless record, stay in the Navy's good graces, or follow Night Fox into what every tactical manual would classify as a suicide mission. He thought about the photo she carried, those 6 SEALs who'd been written off as dead until she refused to accept it. He thought about Hayes in his survival vest, watching enemy vehicles closing in, knowing his own people had abandoned him. He thought about what it meant to wear the wings of gold, not just flying skill, but a code, a promise that transcended regulations and orders. Night Fox Maverick, Jake called, his voice steady despite his hammering heart. I'm with you all the way. Alpha 3, Commander Patterson announced. I'm in, let's go get him. Bravo 1, the Growler pilot added. We'll provide electronic warfare support. No way we're leaving Hayes to those bastards. Charlie Flight is with you, Night Fox, the fighter sweep leader confirmed. We'll keep the enemy fighters off your back. Night Fox's voice carried something Jake hadn't heard before. Emotion, gratitude, steel. Copy all. Alpha Flight on me. We've got maybe 10 minutes before those ground forces reach Hayes. Bravo, I need you to blind every radar system within 50 miles. Charlie, anything that flies gets shot down. This is going to get ugly. Overwatch to all aircraft. The mission commander was nearly screaming now. You are all ordered to stand down immediately. Night Fox, if you proceed, you will face court-martial. Then I'll see you in court, sir, Night Fox replied. But right now I've got a pilot to save. Alpha Flight, weapons free on any ground forces approaching Hayes's position. Let's light them up. She rolled inverted and dove toward the mountains, her aircraft disappearing into the terrain at speeds that made Jake's previous flying look tame. He followed, pushing his damaged aircraft to its limits, hydraulic warnings flashing but still flyable. Below them, Jake could see vehicle headlights, at least a dozen enemy trucks racing across the valley floor toward Hayes's position. They had maybe 8 minutes before enemy soldiers reached him. Hayes Alpha 1, Night Fox called. I need your exact position, pop your strobe now. A flashing beacon appeared in Jake's night vision, Hayes's rescue strobe, marking his position on a hillside surrounded by sparse vegetation. I see you, Commander, Night Fox said. Stay low and stay quiet, help is coming. Night Fox, they're going to court-martial you for this, Hayes replied. Let them, you're not getting captured on my watch. She armed her weapons. Alpha Flight, those vehicles are now hostile. Engage at will. Night Fox's aircraft screamed across the valley at 50 feet, her targeting system locking onto the lead vehicle. Her cannon roared, a burst of 20 shells that walked across the truck, turning it into a fireball. The convoy scattered, vehicles veering off the road. Jake followed her pattern, selecting the second truck with his targeting pod. He pickled off one of his remaining AIM-9X missiles, designed for air-to-air combat but deadly against ground targets. The missile tracked perfectly, slamming into the truck's engine block and detonating with catastrophic force. Good kill, Maverick, Night Fox confirmed. Alpha 3, take the eastern group. Patterson rolled in, his cannon fire raking across 3 more vehicles. But there were too many. For every truck they destroyed, 2 more appeared from side roads and hidden positions. Night Fox, we've got a problem, the Growler pilot announced. Enemy air defenses are reorienting toward Hayes's position. They're going to bracket the entire area with SAMs. We won't be able to operate there in 90 seconds. Then we've got 90 seconds to get him out, Night Fox replied. Overwatch, I need the rescue helicopter now. Vector them to Hayes's coordinates. Night Fox, the Starbird cannot. I'm not asking, Overwatch. That helicopter moves now or Commander Hayes dies. Your choice. There was a long, agonizing pause. Then, SAR 1, proceed to coordinates transmitted. Alpha 1, you'd better keep that helicopter alive. Copy that, I'll keep them alive or die trying. Night Fox's aircraft jinked violently as another SAM launch warning blared. Charlie Flight, where are those enemy fighters? 5 miles out and closing fast. We're engaged, but they're pushing through. Everything was falling apart. Too many threats, too little time, impossible odds. And Night Fox flew through it all like the night itself had claimed her. Like she'd done this before. Like she'd do it 1,000 times more if it meant bringing her people home. Jake watched her work, directing fires, coordinating the rescue, engaging targets, dodging missiles, and understood why she was a legend. Because some people don't just follow orders. Some people write their own ending. And Night Fox had decided this story wouldn't end with a captured pilot and a flag-draped coffin. Not tonight. Not ever. The rescue helicopter, call sign Guardian 1, appeared on radar, racing toward Hayes's position at maximum speed. It was an MH-60S Seahawk, flown by pilots who understood that every second counted when retrieving a downed aviator from enemy territory. Guardian 1, Alpha 1, Night Fox transmitted. You've got approximately 6 minutes before enemy ground forces reach the pickup zone. I'll provide top cover and suppress ground fire. Copy Alpha 1, we're coming in fast and low. But fast and low weren't enough. Jake watched his tactical display as enemy vehicles continued converging from multiple directions. The convoy they'd scattered was regrouping, and fresh reinforcements poured in from a garrison 15 miles north. Worse, his radar warning receiver showed the S-400 missile systems repositioning. They'd figured out where the rescue was happening and were adjusting their fields of fire accordingly. Night Fox, I'm reading SAM batteries repositioning, Jake called. They're going to have a firing solution on the rescue bird in 4 minutes. I see them. Night Fox's voice was pure steel. Bravo Flight, can you jam those S-400s? Negative, Alpha 1. We're at maximum jamming capacity, just keeping the SA-15s blind. If we shift to the S-400s, the short-range systems will lock us all up. Night Fox's aircraft banked hard, flying a combat air patrol circle around Hayes's position. Jake could practically hear her mind working through the tactical problem. Too many threats, too few aircraft, time running out like sand through fingers. Then we need to kill those S-400 launchers before they can fire, she announced. Alpha 3, you're with me. We're going hunting. Night Fox, those launchers are protected by point defense systems, Patterson protested. It's a suicide run. Then I'll go alone. Alpha Flight, maintain cover over the rescue bird. Maverick, your mission commander if I don't come back. Negative, Jake's voice cracked with intensity. You're not going alone. He broke formation, his aircraft cutting across the sky to join Night Fox's wing. Every instinct he'd developed over years of training screamed that this was wrong, leaving the rescue bird unprotected, charging at heavily defended targets, splitting their forces. But something deeper than training, something primal about the bond between warriors, drove him forward. Maverick, I gave you an order, Night Fox said. And I'm refusing it. You taught me that sometimes orders don't matter as much as doing what's right. Jake pulled into tight formation on her wing. We do this together or not at all. There was a pause. Then, incredibly, he heard something in her voice that might have been pride. Copy that, wingman. Let's go kill some SAMs. They dove toward the valley floor, accelerating to 550 knots. The S-400 launchers were positioned on a ridgeline 3 miles northeast, massive vehicles with missiles angled skyward like the fingers of death. As they approached, Jake's threat warning receiver exploded with new contacts. They've got short-range point defense, he called out. Panzer systems, at least 3 of them. The Panzer systems opened fire. A storm of 30 cannon rounds and short-range missiles, designed specifically to kill aircraft attempting exactly what Night Fox and Jake were doing. Tracers filled the air, a deadly light show that looked beautiful and terrifying simultaneously. Night Fox didn't flinch. She flew straight into the teeth of the defenses, jinking and weaving with movements so violent Jake's aircraft shuddered trying to follow. Cannon rounds passed within feet of her canopy. A missile detonated close enough that Jake felt the shockwave through his airframe. "Fox 3, Night Fox called, releasing her last GPS-guided bomb. The weapon fell away, tracking toward the nearest S-400 launcher. Night Fox didn't wait to see if it hit. She was already rolling hard right, breaking away from the defenses. Jake stayed with her, following her through a maneuver that would have been impossible if he hadn't spent the last 8 hours studying her flying style, learning to anticipate her movements. As they pulled out of the dive, his rearview mirror showed Night Fox's bomb strike home, the S-400 launcher exploding in a massive fireball. "Good kill," Jake confirmed, "but there are still 3 more launchers." "Then we use guns," Night Fox said simply. She pulled into a vertical climb, rolled inverted at the top, and dove back toward the remaining launchers. Her cannon roared, walking 20 rounds across the second launcher. Jake followed her pattern, his own cannon fire chewing into the third launcher's radar system. The fourth launcher, however, was already trained on the rescue helicopter. "Guardian 1, you've got missile lock," Jake screamed. "Break left." But the Seahawk was 50 feet above the ground, hovering as Hayes sprinted across open terrain toward the open door. The pilot couldn't brake, not without leaving Hayes behind. Jake saw the S-400 missile launch, its massive rocket motor igniting. The missile accelerated toward the vulnerable helicopter, tracking perfectly. And Jake made a decision that would either save lives or end his. He pushed his throttles into full afterburner and dove his aircraft directly between the missile and the helicopter, putting his Super Hornet's heat signature in the missile's path, offering himself as a more attractive target. "Maverick, what are you doing?" Night Fox shouted. The missile seeker head locked onto Jake's aircraft. His threat warning receiver went solid tone. Every defensive system activated simultaneously, chaff dispensers firing, flares ejecting, electronic countermeasures flooding the spectrum. The missile adjusted course, chasing Jake instead of the helicopter. "Guardian 1, you're clear," Jake called. "Get Hayes and get out." He pulled into a 9G turn, feeling his vision tunnel, his consciousness flickering. The missile followed, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Jake had seconds, maybe less. Deploying countermeasures. He hit the chaff button repeatedly, filling the air with radar-reflective strips. The missile wavered, confused by multiple targets. Then Night Fox appeared from nowhere, her aircraft screaming past Jake's canopy with feet to spare. She positioned herself between Jake and the pursuing missile, firing flares in a continuous stream. The missile seeker head lost lock, confused by multiple heat sources and radar returns. It flew past both aircraft, detonating harmlessly 200 feet away. "Guardian 1, we've got the package," the helicopter pilot transmitted. "Hayes is aboard, we're egressing." "All aircraft break off and follow the rescue bird," Night Fox commanded. "Charlie Flight, where are those enemy fighters?" 3 miles and closing. MiG-29's 4 aircraft. "Charlie, you're clear to engage. Splash them." The radio filled with callouts as the fighter sweep engaged the enemy aircraft. Jake heard missile launches, radar locks, evasive calls. Through it all, Night Fox orchestrated the chaos like a conductor leading a symphony of violence. "Alpha Flight, form on me," she ordered. "We're getting everyone home." Jake pulled alongside her aircraft, and for a moment their eyes met through their canopies. She nodded once, acknowledgement, respect, gratitude. Then they were racing toward friendly territory, the rescue helicopter tucked protectively in the middle of their formation. Behind them, the weapons facility burned. 3 S-400 launchers lay destroyed, and enemy forces scrambled in confusion. Ahead lay 60 miles of hostile territory, low fuel states, and probable court-martial proceedings. But Commander Hayes was alive. And that was all that mattered. Alpha Flight fuel check, Night Fox requested. Jake glanced at his gauge and felt his stomach drop. Alpha 2, 2,200 pounds. That's below minimum for recovery. Alpha 3, 1,800, Patterson reported grimly. They'd burned too much fuel in the extended combat, the afterburner runs, the aggressive defensive maneuvering. Even with tankers waiting near the border, they might not make it. Overwatch Alpha 1. We need emergency tanking immediately. Multiple aircraft are below fuel minimums. Alpha 1 Overwatch. Tankers are repositioning to intercept Point Yankee. ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Jake did the math in his head. At current fuel consumption, flying straight and level, they had maybe 12 minutes of flight time before flameout. But they weren't flying straight and level. They were racing through hostile territory with enemy fighters still in pursuit. Alpha Flight reduced to minimum fuel consumption, Night Fox ordered. Single-engine flight if necessary. We're making that tanker rendezvous. Jake shut down his starboard engine, watching his fuel consumption drop. His aircraft flew asymmetrically now, requiring constant trim adjustments, but every second the remaining engine ran on reduced fuel was another second of life. The border approached on his navigation display, that invisible line between hostile territory and friendly airspace. Behind them, the fighter sweep had successfully engaged the MiG-29s, splashing two and driving the others away. Guardian 1 reported crossing into friendly airspace with Hayes stable and uninjured. Alpha Flight feet wet in 30 seconds, Night Fox announced. Jake watched the coastline approach, that beautiful line where mountains gave way to ocean. They crossed it at exactly 23:34 hours, officially escaping hostile territory. Overwatch Alpha Flight is feet wet, Night Fox transmitted. All aircraft accounted for. Copy Alpha 1. Tanker is at your 12 o'clock 15 miles. Jake saw it on radar, the KC-130 tanker orbiting in a racetrack pattern, waiting to give them life-sustaining fuel. Night Fox coordinated the formation for emergency refueling, allowing the aircraft with lowest fuel states to tank first. Jake was down to 800 pounds, critically low, when he finally made contact with the tanker's drogue. Fuel flowed into his tanks, and he felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. They all tanked, topping off their fuel, ensuring everyone would make it home. As Jake disconnected from the tanker and reformed on Night Fox's wing, he looked across at her aircraft. It was scarred from combat, panels blackened from near misses, hydraulic fluid streaking from minor damage but flying strong. Just like its pilot. Alpha Flight, let's go home, Night Fox said simply. And together, they turned toward the carrier, toward safety, toward the consequences that awaited them. But they flew together. And they'd brought everyone home. No one left behind. Ever, the carrier appeared on the horizon at 1:42 hours, a floating city of steel and light in the dark ocean. The USS Abraham Lincoln, home. Jake had landed on carriers hundreds of times, but this approach felt different. They weren't returning as conquering heroes. They were returning as pilots who disobeyed direct orders in front of the entire chain of command. Alpha Flight, this is Lincoln Tower. You're cleared for recovery. Be advised, Admiral Kincaid requests all Alpha Flight pilots report to his office immediately upon landing. No delay. Jake's stomach nodded. Admiral James Kincaid was the carrier strike group commander, a 3-star with a reputation for crushing careers that crossed him. The no delay meant they wouldn't even get to debrief properly. They were going straight to judgment. Lincoln Tower, Alpha 1 copies, Night Fox responded, her voice betraying nothing. Alpha Flight, let's bring them home clean. Good flying tonight, everyone. Night Fox landed first, her trap perfect despite the damaged aircraft and exhaustion. Jake followed, feeling his wheels slam onto the deck. the arresting wire catching his tailhook and yanking his 18-ton aircraft to a halt in 2 seconds. He taxied clear, shut down, and climbed out into the controlled chaos of the flight deck. Maintenance Chief Rodriguez was there immediately, inspecting Night Fox's aircraft. His face went pale as he surveyed the damage: shrapnel holes, hydraulic leaks, scorched panels from near-miss missiles. "Commander Chen," he said quietly, "you shouldn't be alive. This bird took hits that should have brought you down." Night Fox pulled off her helmet, her hair plastered to her head with sweat. "She's a tough bird, Chief, just like her crew chief keeps her." She placed one hand on the fuselage almost tenderly. "Get her patched up. She earned her rest." Jake joined the formation of Alpha Flight pilots as they headed below decks. Commander Hayes, who'd been immediately cleared by medical after his rescue, was waiting at the base of the ladder. His flight suit was torn and dirty, but his eyes were clear. "Night Fox," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you could have left me, should have left me. Why?" "Because you're one of us," she interrupted. "That's reason enough." Hayes nodded, unable to speak further. The look he gave her was the kind of respect that transcended rank, the bond between someone who'd faced death and the person who'd refused to let them die alone. The walk to Admiral Kincaid's office felt like a funeral procession. Marines stood at attention as they passed. Junior officers stopped to stare. Word had spread. Night Fox had gone rogue again, and this time she'd taken half the strike package with her. Outside the Admiral's office, they waited. Jake noticed Night Fox's hands were steady, her expression calm. If she felt fear, she hid it perfectly. The hatch opened. A captain emerged, his face unreadable. "Commander Chen, the Admiral will see you first, alone." Night Fox walked in without hesitation. The hatch closed behind her with the finality of a coffin lid. Jake and the others waited in agonizing silence. 15 minutes, 20, 30. What was happening in there? Was Kincaid ending her career right now? Would she face court-martial, prison time for disobeying orders in combat? Finally, after 45 minutes, the hatch opened. Night Fox emerged, her expression unchanged. Behind her, Admiral Kincaid stood framed in the doorway, a tall man with iron-gray hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent 30 years in naval aviation. "Captain Richardson," Kincaid said, "you're next." Jake entered the office, came to attention. "Sir." Kincaid studied him for a long moment. "At ease, Captain, sit down." Jake sat in the chair across from the Admiral's desk. The office was lined with photographs: Kincaid as a young pilot, aircraft carrier operations, aerial combat shots. One photo showed a much younger Kincaid receiving a medal, his flight suit torn and bloodstained. "Do you know what that photo is?" Kincaid asked, following Jake's gaze. "No, sir." 1991. Desert Storm. I was a lieutenant flying an F-14 when my wingman took a SAM hit over Iraq. Command ordered me to egress, enemy fighters inbound, fuel state critical. I refused. Flew top cover for 40 minutes while a rescue bird extracted him from hostile territory. Kincaid's eyes locked onto Jake's. "I was court-martialed for disobeying orders." Jake's blood ran cold. "The court-martial was dropped," Kincaid continued, "because my wingman was the son of a senator, and the Navy couldn't afford the publicity of punishing the pilot who saved him. But I learned something that day about the difference between orders and what's right." He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the flight deck. "Tonight, you disobeyed direct orders. You followed Commander Chen into a tactical situation that every manual says was unwinnable. You risked your life, your aircraft, and your career. Why?" Jake chose his words carefully. "Because Commander Hayes was alive and calling for help, sir. Because leaving him wasn't acceptable. Because Night Fox was right, no one gets left behind. Not on our watch. Even if it meant destroying your career." "Even then, sir." Kincaid turned back to face him. "You know what makes a good pilot, Richardson? Skill, training, reflexes. You know what makes a great pilot? The ability to make impossible decisions in impossible situations and live with the consequences. He returned to his desk. Tonight, you became a great pilot. Jake blinked, confused. Sir, Commander Chen has recommended you for the Distinguished Flying Cross for your actions tonight. You placed yourself between a missile and a rescue helicopter, saving 6 lives, Hayes and the 5-man helicopter crew. That's the kind of courage this Navy needs. What about the court-martial? Kincaid smiled grimly. There will be no court-martial. Commander Hayes' rescue is already international news. CNN has the story. The headlines read, Navy pilots risk everything to save comrade. The Pentagon loves it. The president is probably going to call personally to thank Commander Chen. He leaned forward. Sometimes, Captain, doing what's right is more important than following orders. But that's a lesson you only learn once you're good enough to know the difference. And Night Fox, sir. Commander Chen is being assigned to the Navy Weapons School, Top Gun, as an instructor. The Navy wants her teaching the next generation of pilots how to do the impossible. Kincaid's expression softened slightly. She's also being promoted to commander, effective immediately, and recommended for her 2nd Navy Cross. Though between you and me, she'll probably refuse the medal. She doesn't fly for recognition. Jake was dismissed and found the rest of Alpha Flight waiting outside. Night Fox stood apart, staring out at the flight deck where maintainers worked on battle-damaged aircraft. So Patterson asked Jake, what's the verdict? No court-martial, we're being decorated. The tension broke like a dam. Hayes actually laughed, Patterson swore in relief, and the other pilots embraced. But Jake only had eyes for Night Fox, who remained separate, watching the celebration with that same enigmatic expression. He approached her. You did it again, pulled off the impossible. We did it, she corrected. You were there every step. When I needed someone to trust me, to follow me into hell, you were there. That's what a wingman does. I almost got you killed with that missile stunt. And I almost got us all killed by refusing orders. She finally looked at him, those gray eyes reflecting the flight deck lights. But Hayes is alive. Everyone came home. That's what matters. The Admiral said you're going to Top Gun, instructor position. If I accept it. She turned back to the flight deck. Teaching means staying safe, flying training missions, dealing with politics. It means not being where the fighting is. It also means creating more pilots like you. More Night Foxes who know that courage isn't just about being fearless. It's about being terrified and flying anyway. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, when did you get so wise, Maverick? I had a good teacher. She was terrifying, brilliant, and absolutely refused to let anyone get left behind. Night Fox smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. You earned your call sign tonight, Jake Richardson. Not the one you came here with, the one you built through action. You're not Maverick anymore. You're something better. You're someone I'd trust my life with. I already am Maverick. Are you? Or are you someone new, someone who learned that being the best isn't about kills or medals? It's about bringing everyone home. She extended her hand. Welcome to the brotherhood of pilots who have seen the worst and chose to be better. It's a small club, but the membership is worth the price. Jake shook her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Thank you, Night Fox, for everything. They stood together on the deck as the sun began rising over the ocean. 2 pilots who'd been to hell and back, who'd learned that some things were worth more than following orders. Around them, the carrier came alive with morning operations. Aircraft launched for combat air patrol. Maintainers continued their endless work. The rhythm of naval aviation continued, as it had for decades, as it would for decades more. But something had changed. Jake could feel it. A shift in his understanding of what it meant to wear these wings, to fly these aircraft, to be entrusted with this responsibility. A young ensign approached nervously. Commander Chen, Captain Richardson, the CAG wants to see you for formal debriefing. Night Fox nodded. Tell him we'll be there in 5 minutes. She watched the ensign leave, then turned back to Jake. "You ready for this? The debriefs, the investigations, the endless questions about why we did what we did. As long as I can tell them the truth, that we did what was right, not what was easy." "Good answer." She started toward the hatch, then paused. "Oh, and Jake, at the O Club tonight, first rounds on you. You owe me for that rookie comment." Jake laughed, really laughed for the first time in days. "Yes, ma'am. Though I should warn you, after tonight's performance, you're probably going to have a crowd wanting to buy you drinks. Then you'd better get there early." She headed below decks, leaving Jake alone on the flight deck with his thoughts. He looked up at the sky, now painted in shades of pink and gold as the sun climbed higher. Somewhere out there, other pilots were flying, fighting, dying. And somewhere out there, someone else might need saving. When that moment came, Jake knew exactly what he would do. Not because orders demanded it. Not because regulations required it. But because he'd learned from the best that some things transcended rules and orders and regulations. Some things were simply right. And legends weren't born from following orders. Legends were made by people who knew when to break them. The end.